Very well. How are things going for you?
Busy.
Yeah, I bet you are busy. Well, we'll talk about that in a
Yeah.
second. So, I'd like to introduce you. My name is Alexandria Levitt, and I'm on the board of SAGE Senior Co-Housing Advocates. And today I'm talking with Joren Bass. Joren is, and please correct me if I don't have this right, Senior Development Manager of UD+P in Portland, Oregon. Trained as an architect, he has 20 years of design and construction experience in the Portland area and beyond. And so, first of all, Jordan, maybe we could start, if you could tell me a little bit about your background and
Yeah.
then how UD+P works with a co-housing group.
Yeah. Yeah. As you said, I started in architecture and construction, and after working as a practicing architect for quite a few years, um, joined UD+P, which we are a development firm. And when I joined, we were just getting started with our first co-housing project, which was PDX Commons. And so I joined and took over that project and started managing the project. And that was really my first really deep dive into co-housing. I had heard about co-housing, and I had, in fact, did graduate work in actually it was in Finland, and then worked there for a number of years. So I was familiar with a lot of the Scandinavian models of housing. So I certainly heard of it, but never worked directly on it. But yeah, after joining UD+P and started working with PDX Commons, then that introduced me to Katie McCammett and her method of working with co-housing groups. And as a company, when really it was the founding members of PDX Commons that came to us and asked us to be their developer. And that was as a company, our first introduction to co-housing as well. And so we thought it was quite interesting and quickly realized that it was there was this need for development professionals to work with co-housing groups. We could tell from the founding members of PDX Commons that the idea of co-housing and the process really had the potential to fill a missing need of housing that we were seeing from the development side, but we didn't quite know how to address. But once we saw sort of the process with co-housing, it made a lot of sense to us. So we decided that we would jump sort of all in with co-housing, and we did a series of workshops with Chuck Durrett and Katie on sort of the process of co-housing and some of the design ideas. And then we started getting involved with the national organization. And we've been attending the national conferences and taking part in the national events for quite a few years now, maybe 7 years. And also been sponsors of the national organization, and we really have learned a lot from them and see the value of that involvement. And so from working with PDX Commons and the success of that, we realized that really there's a need for the development professionals to work with the communities. And so we have looked at sort of the variety of different ways communities start and how they progress from the concept to the completion of their units and their residences, and have found that our model of working is very, very much follows what Katie McCammett has done, and there's the other developer, Jim Leach, have done over the years, where really it comes from the founding members. We look for a strong founding group, and it can be, we found there's no magic number of households, but it's really more about the passion of that group. And if that's there, then we're willing to partner with them and serve as their developer. We really see it as a collaboration. We look to the community to really drive the concept of what the development's going to be about, what their community is going to be about. We often partner. We partner. There's always sort of this milestone phase of when they can get in contract on a land or acquire land. There's sort of, we call it sort of the wandering in the wilderness before, and then there's the going under contract with the land, and all of a sudden the project seems to get very real. And so that's usually about the time that we get involved with the groups. Some of the groups that we're working with, we have helped them find land or acquire the land. Other groups have already acquired the land and they're ready to take the next step and start with the pre-construction process. And so, but that's a really good time for us to get involved, because by then the community has really sort of set the groundwork of what they want to be about. And then we can help them put their professional team together. We really strongly encourage the groups to bring us on at that point, because we can help them select the right architect and the right professional team. And that's really important, because you need the right team of professionals to move the project forward quickly and on the right path. There can be a lot of time spent going in circles if you don't have the right team together to make decisions, to understand the budget, and understand how co-housing, sort of the development process and the cash flow works, because that's something that we're very aware of, is that, you know, it's a building process, not just for obviously the physical architecture of the project, but the community. And there's going to be a process of bringing more and more community members on, and that also is part of the cash flow. And so we want to be very deliberate on, you know, what do you do first, what you do second, what you do third, and so that it helps the project move and coincide with how the community is being built as far as members coming on board. So. Yeah.
So when you talk about that team and how important finding the right architect is, what are some of the other professionals that you really like to see brought on at the beginning then?
Right. So there's a whole series around sort of the due diligence of the property, and there's a whole set of work around that. So if, say, they're in contract but they haven't purchased the property, then we like to help them, you know, just make sure it's the right piece, and they're getting a good value on the purchase price. And this is unique. Every property is slightly different, whether it might have geotechnical or land issues, or zoning issues, or other items that just need to be researched. And so this can be from getting a geotechnical engineer involved, or a soils engineer, or sometimes there's environmental or remediation that needs to be done, as well as just looking at zoning studies and making sure the land use is proper. So it can be the involvement of an architect. Doesn't always need to be. Sometimes there's more targeted professionals. So that's one aspect of the professional team that's really important, to make sure that the project starts off the right footing. And then after that, once the land is acquired, it's getting the design rolling. And so we work with the groups very early on to start vetting potential contractors. We've seen a lot of groups who have gotten excited and jump in with an architect, but they really have no idea about what the true costs are. And it ends up really derailing a project if they go through design workshops and they really don't have a strong footing of what it costs in their area to build. So we want to be involved and help them to put together strong construction budgets that are really as accurate as possible. And that can often be done even before any early design work is done. Just vetting contractors, finding the right ones, and understanding what the construction market is in their area. So we like to bring the contractor on, and then they can help direct some of the choices that are made in the design process, so we can really, use the budget wisely and put effort towards, whether it's working around, again, soils conditions or some other constraints, where we can quickly spend a lot of money, but not have really a benefit to the program or the community as far as built area or amenities. So we like to be involved with that, and then of course helping the community select the other design members. This may be structural engineers or mechanical or electrical engineers, and all of those folks, and every jurisdiction's a little difference on what we need to do to get to a building permit, but that's part of our part of our role is to help guide that decision-making process and make sure, again, a lot of it's about, are we spending the money for the project in the right way, on the right professionals that are really going to help move the project forward in the right order. So that's a big part of what we do. But then there's a lot of sort of just back end logistics for the team. So we have staff that does all the bookkeeping and accounting and helps with all the tax records and all of that. That most communities, even if they have folks in their community who have those skills, they're not best spent doing that on a co-housing project. So we now have folks in our office that are really skilled on how do you track member contributions, and how does it, if they've joined the LLC, development LLC, what does the end of year tax implications look like for members, and then we just doing the monthly payment of invoices and that sort of work, which is really for a community it can be a big drudgery, but because we process a lot of them at a time, our staff is very efficient at doing that. And ultimately where that comes into play is that when we're going to go to construction, we want to have really good books for going to a construction lender and talking to them, and getting a loan. We want to show that the project's on good footing and that it has a really good record of accounting, and so that's actually a big part of what we do for communities, and it's not very glamorous, but it's very helpful.
Well, absolutely. I mean, co-housers, this is not their area of strength. So, and they can spend a lot of time and energy and get very frustrated spinning their wheels trying to figure this out.
Right.
So finding people that can help them with that is important.
Yeah. So we really try to take that burden off of them, because we really want the community out there, building the membership and really finding other folks who want to join the community, and really we want them spending their time also just really honing in on what are they as a community, because that'll ultimately make them stronger as new members come on, having a real clear sense of how does their community process work, how does their process of decision making work, the process, all their consensus skills, all of that. We want that to be strong, and we also want them to have fun in the design workshops. We want the community to really put their thoughts and their efforts towards really envisioning what their dream is, and so we play an active part of the workshops. We attend the workshops with the community and with the design professionals, and help, where needed, give advice on how the project can be designed that, again, it fits the budget, and is going to function well. I mean, we're now working with, almost a dozen communities currently. Wow. We're getting close to a dozen. Wow, so we've been through a lot of design workshops. We've seen a lot. We've visited, lots and lots and lots of communities across the country, and so we have a really good sense of what functions well and what didn't turn out so well for different communities. So, and then just helping them guide, just on some of the sort of basic rules of real estate that they, if once they've now jumped in as a developer themselves, and we want to help them, guide them through, how do appraisals work, and why would you need certain things to appraise, or how does a lender look at these sort of projects, and how can we entice them to take an interest. So Yeah.
What do you wish co-housers knew when they come to a company like you?
Yeah. Um, well, what's interesting is um, you know, we find that co-housers are very inquisitive people by nature, right? And they're all just they're great people. We love working with them, and they what's so exciting is that um, folks come to co-housing because they're curious about it, and they tend to be um, doers, right? But they're coming from other professions or other walks of life, but I have yet to find one who hasn't sort of been successful in whatever they were coming at, and they've come to co-housing, and now they're in a totally new realm, and I see usually early on a sort of a level of frustration because all of a sudden they're in a different environment. They don't quite, they haven't built something of this scale before. Maybe they've remodeled their house or done a little addition, but they've never worked on a multi-million-dollar development process. And so what we wanted to know is to relax. It's development is fun, but it's also, there's always a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
And you have to just, you kind of have to roll with it. But if you put a good professional team together, that they're there to advise, but also to sort of deal with those and help you anticipate those, and that's often hard for co-housers early on because they're not used to sort of being, at this point in their life, they tend to not be working with something that they don't have a lot of experience with, and so lots of times it's as much coaching just to relax. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
There's some unknowns. We're going to work through them, and there's a method to the process, but it's different than what they maybe do in their typical day to day. So
well, I think what I'm hearing you say a little bit is that co-housers are used to being in control,
yeah,
and now
yeah.
they're in this process where there's a lot of money and other things going on, and it's being handled, and it's hard for them to kind of get into that process, maybe till they get more of a familiarity and comfort with
Right.
the people they're working with.
Yeah. So we spend a lot of time. We do helping them organize one into committees. Of course, that always helps if folks are you kind of spread the work, because oftentimes when we first join a group, there's one or two members who are really shouldering the burden of it, and it's too much for that smaller group to handle. You need to have a good committee structure, and you also need places where new people can plug in. We always want new members to be able to plug in and get on some of the work groups where they have interest and where they have passion, and get involved. And so we spend a lot of time with that, and working with say their development committee and their finance committee, and everything that we do is open book, and we're very transparent with the process, because we want them to feel like they're part, and to dive as deep as they want to dive into any one aspect. But we also want them to know that we're there, and the rest of the professional team there is to pick up, and we'll move it along. So yeah, and that can be fun. I often sort of refer to it, at least to my family, as that I'm constantly teaching a graduate course on development.
You are, yeah, absolutely. And they want to know all of it right away, like yesterday.
They want to know all of it right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting that you're working on so many projects now. I wonder if you could talk a little bit how the current pandemic situation is affecting your work, and either now or beyond that, how you see the future of co-housing.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It in many ways, well, I'd say in general, the pandemic has significantly increased the interest in co-housing. It's been really amazing. Obviously, the first week or two, there was a lot of panic, and some of our existing communities, were just sort of caught in shock, as most people were. But following that, most of our community, pretty much all of our communities that were in the development process, have seen significant uptick in new members coming in. which has been great. And we've seen a lot of new communities start to form. So we've had a lot of inquiries from new communities that have been asking about our services or to work with them. And I think it's just really, the pandemic has refocused a lot of people into, where do they live? What's their community? How big is their community? What's their close community? Who do they interact with day to day? And it's really put a lot of attention on that, and that has co-housing has come up for people, whether they knew about co-housing before or now and heard of it, and has really it's amazing. We're seeing a huge upswing in interest in co-housing, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Talking with existing communities, they're most communities, all of them that we've talked with, are handling the pandemic quite well, and it's been really supportive for folks, particularly folks that would tend to be more introverted and whatnot. Living in community and having those connections are more important than ever, and so that's been it's been really amazing to see how communities have dealt with it, and the new interest in co-housing. So it's really great. On the development side, it's actually quite interesting. We did a lot of calls. We were doing weekly community calls when this all sort of started, to just talk with the communities about, okay, what are our options? What's going on there out in the world for construction and financing, and just as far as the housing markets, and is this trying to just help them work through what are the next steps. Should the project go on hold, or should we do something different? And what we really found was the pandemic as a whole, as we all know now, is a whole different situation than, say, the market issues of 2008 or 2009. And so we're in it. It's always uncharted territory. But what we're seeing is that construction lending is still quite strong out there. Construction is still going on. However, it's lightened up a lot. A lot of development projects, non-co-housing projects, we've seen quite a few of them go on hold, or investors want to sort of pull back and see what happens, which is actually quite great for co-housing, because it's a different financial structure than say an apartment development, or even or other for sale condo development. Most co-housing groups still have the financial ability to move forward, which, as we're pricing projects right now, we're seeing it at the construction pricing never gets cheaper.
Right.
But what we're not seeing right now is the amount of escalation that we would typically see in pricing. So that's the hard part. One hard part about co-housing is that we're always trying to predict where a unit price will be, say, 3 years down the road when a project completes. And we always have escalation, like, sort of breathing down our necks, and we're trying to hold prices and manage it till there. And we have a let up right now in pricing that we're seeing in most markets, and that's great. We just broke ground on a new community in Spokane in May, which was pretty amazing, and a good indicator of this, where we were actually still able to close the construction financing during the pandemic. So, we had a number of calls where the community was still strong, and we didn't lose a single member. We actually got 100% of the community, or 100% of the units were reserved by members, and the lender was still on board. They didn't panic, and as a developer, we could see that there was still, the project was still quite strong. So we were able to close on the construction loan and break ground and get under construction. And so that project is actually moving quite quickly, because they're seeing that the construction labor market isn't as tight as it had been, and so it's quite helpful. That makes a big difference in construction. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So are your projects all over the country, or are they mostly in the Northwest?
Mostly Northwest. So we have projects from Northern California through Oregon and Washington currently. that's the other thing the pandemic has changed.
Yeah.
Before this, we were traveling a lot, obviously, for our projects, and we've learned how to move things virtually online. So it's been really good for our communities to learn how to obviously communicate. I think it's made meetings not only for the communities easier, and able to, I think that's also helped with their marketing, is they've been able to connect to potential members who are coming out from out of the area to come live in the project, and live in the community when it's done. We typically see that in most of our co-housing projects. We see about 1/3 of the community are going to be new to the area in projects, and obviously it varies here and there, but that's kind of seems to be about the ratio of new households to a specific region that are moving there specifically to live in that community. Sometimes there's some other connection. Usually there's a family connection or something, but they move there. And so it's always been a challenge in the past for those members to connect with the developing community as regularly. But now that everybody's virtual, that's been really great. And we'll probably see that. I think we'll see the numbers of community members who are coming from a greater distance increase with that. For our work, it's been easier for us to connect, obviously, with those communities. It's nice to not have to, say fly down to California from Portland just for a series of meetings. And that goes with also working with our design professionals and our, I have calls with jurisdictions and land use committees and land use, commissions. And it's now that everybody's virtual, that really, it's helpful. I mean, it's better for the environment to not have to travel so much.
Absolutely. No, it's forced us to try and work this way. So for folks who are in parts of the country, not the Northwest, but if they're looking for someone to be a partner developer like this, what are a couple criteria they should keep top of mind, do you think?
Right. Yeah. So when a community is looking for a partner developer, it's good to have an understanding of what you're looking for from the developer. And we see kind of, there's a range of services that different developers bring for communities. And it's good to sort of understand what a community needs. Sort of the biggest one, the hardest one, that's hard to fill without a developer is securing the construction financing. And that's really the one of our main roles with communities is, so the community will bring a percentage of the equity that's required, and then we will secure and guarantee the construction loan. So most construction lenders, even though a lot of them will love the idea of co-housing, they really want to see a developer as part of the team who is willing to guarantee the construction loan. Lender doesn't want to look at a collection of households and get individual guarantees from those. They want a developer who has a track record and a balance sheet that's able to secure that loan. So that's if that's what a community is looking for, they should understand that. Some communities have been able to get a builder to step in a little bit to that role, or then there are some communities that have been able to talk some lenders into offering a loan to the community itself. But the community also has to be prepared to guarantee that, and that's usually a little more than a lot of community members want to sign on to. So that's the role. And then, of course, project management, this accounting and bookkeeping. But really, a lot of it is about how do you move a development process forward on schedule. We often talk with community members always want to know sort of where's the risk in the project, right? As you're, writing a check to join the community, you want to know where the risk is. And in all of development, really the number one factor of risk is time. The longer a project takes, the more open it is to areas of risk. So if a project can go through the design and construction process as quick as possible, usually that's roughly 3 years. Sometimes you can shave a little bit off, but that's really quick for co-housing. Then you're going to manage a lot of the risk out there, because the real risk is often financial, or is there another economic crisis? Is there changes in the code or the zoning? Are there other unforeseen elements out there that could influence the project? and that also, the risk is also for the community is individual members. I mean, folks, life happens.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for anybody to sort of plan too far down the road. And once you sort of start getting involved with co-housing, you want to get it complete and get moved in and be with your new neighbors. So that's really where we see it is, basically every day we wake up, it's like, how can we push this project more forward quicker today? That's really our goal with all of our communities. So
that's great. So that's what they're looking for. And do you, just one last question. I mean, you guys have really taken something that's new to the country, and sort of said, I mean, Jim Leach was doing it, but to take it on professionally and have that whole service. Are other, developers starting to do this around the country, or do you guys still feel like you're sort of the only ones?
I have yet to meet another one. We keep showing up at the co-housing conferences and looking around the room, and we've yet to find anyone else that really partners with the communities in the way we have, other than Jim and has done in the past. There's a smaller developer in Portland who's doing it, but he's mostly self-developing co-housing projects. So he's really not necessarily partnering with communities, but he's looking for properties and then converting them into co-housing properties. But he's the only other sort of serial co-housing developer.
Interesting. Well, we just have to replicate you a few times around the country.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so it's continuing to grow for us. We're continuing to grow our staff in co-housing, and also looking at, and that's also growing us geographically as we continue to move farther and farther. But I talk with communities all the time across the country, and I'm always happy to talk to them. But I really want to, before we bring on a community that we can partner with, we want to make sure that we can bring, good value to what they need too. So we want to,
Yeah. Well, that's great, Joren. I really appreciate it. You speak so well to this, and I know I'm going to think of more questions later, but maybe we'll get you another time, I hope.
Sure.
But thank you for your time, and it's much appreciated. And be well. And when this is up, and I will give you the link to it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.